All right, welcome back everyone. What we're looking at today is we're trying to build an RPG. We are looking at other board games. We're ripping off their best ideas so that we can put a pile together of what are the ideas we like out of board games and RPGs, and then say, how do we want ours to feel? Okay, so today we're looking at 13th Age. It's a D20 system based off of, or at least some of the creators of it came from D&D 4e. It got a lot of awards back in, I don't know, it was like 2012. Cool system. So what are some of the things it does really well? Well, first thing I love is the background system for skills. This is brilliant. So if you think about a lot of the skill systems, like 5e, that's the hugely popular one currently. So if you think about their skill systems, you have acrobatics, athletics, perception, history, etc., etc. And what you're having to do is choose which skills you want to put points in. Cool concept. I love it. It makes it easy for a DM to run in terms of give me a perception check, give me a, etc. Performance check. So what do they do? Well, they don't have any skills in this 13th Age. Instead, you have a laundry list of backgrounds. And you as a player choose your backgrounds, and they're a little bit bland, I shouldn't say bland, but a little bit more generalized concepts for backgrounds. And you choose your backgrounds, and then you put skill points into them. So say your background was you were a guard or a mercenary, and then maybe you were a pickpocket, right? And so you then say, well, I've got 4 skill points, so I'm gonna put 3 into guard and 1 into pickpocketing, or pickpocket, or something. And so now what happens is if a scenario comes up and you have to decide, like, so the DM comes up with a scenario like normal, you now can try and say, well, I'm gonna make a check to do this, and you have to relate it back to one of your backgrounds as to why you would have that skill set. So maybe you're trying to scan the crowd for someone who might be a bad guy that you're trying to track down. Well, when you were a bodyguard, like Secret Service style bodyguard, you had to really get good at that because you had to figure out where danger might be coming. So you could say that's why my guard background makes sense for this sort of perception scanning. So now you would roll your D20 plus however many points you put into the guard background. So say you put 3 points in, you roll D20 plus 3. That's awesome because I think that it adds room for sort of like role-playing history, like role-playing one, but also fleshing out your character more in terms of its history as you're playing, as opposed to it being a little too abstracted. And like, I'm just good at survival. You're like, no, I was a mercenary and I had to go out and or I was a soldier in an army, and so we had to march X amount of miles, we had to bring our own rations, everything had to be on our back. That's cool, but multiple people could be good at that depending on their background and how they could explain it. I was a street urchin, so yeah, my survival skills through the roof because I had to live on my own and figure it out. So I think that's really cool. I think it adds a lot of flexibility, as long as people aren't trying to abuse it and create these sort of like God backgrounds that kind of do it all, right? They had an icon system. So the icon system in 13th Age was in essence sort of like gods or the most powerful people in your setting. And you had relationships with them as a player. And those relationships were either really good or really bad. And what you would do is at the beginning of a session, so if you're all sitting down to play, it's gonna be a 4-hour session. You roll D6 on a 5 or a 6. I forget what it is, but on a 5 or a 6 or something like that, your icon was going to influence you during that session. Really neat idea. I think that it puts a lot of pressure on the DM, but I think it also becomes sort of like a get out of jail free card for the DM, because now if that player had rolled 6 and say you did something that was going to kill that player in that session, now you've got this get out of jail free card to be able to say, no, it's okay, you're doing great. I'll say that's one of the things. I got a buddy and we both DM, we trade off DMing in Fantasy Grounds, and we love it. Fantasy Grounds automates a ton of stuff, but sometimes, we don't condone fudging dice, but sometimes dice rolls can be incredibly brutal, and when you're in a digital system that's automating everything, there's There's no fudging. So having something like this where you can use an icon system where there's divine intervention that's mechanically built into it, not just the DM saying, you know, it's not your time, but there's a mechanic involved. Like the player feels like because what they've built relationship-wise prior to this, you know, session, that they've kind of controlled it in some way, shape, or form. So that's kind of cool. What else? They do different armor classes. So they do like armor versus physical versus mental defenses. That's kind of cool. I'm not probably gonna put that in yet because I like that. Okay, we'll just put in multiple defenses, and we'll say armor class versus physical defense versus mental defense. Okay, so I like that. Oh, the escalation dice. Escalation die, which is a d6. This is awesome. So pretty much what happens is that when you're playing, you're in combat. Round 1, normal. Round 2, the DM takes a d6, puts it in the middle of the table with the 1 pip up. Then round 3 comes, and they turn it to the 2 pips up. And it keeps escalating every round after the first round. And what this does is that whatever side is showing, the players get +1 to attack and +1 to damage of that. So after 5 rounds of combat, it's at the 4, you're getting +4 to attack and damage. That's massive. What this does is it speeds up combat. I think it simulates the idea that people are getting sloppy as combat goes on. You're getting tired, you're getting fatigued, there's more openings possibly. And so I think that that's kind of cool. So thematically that makes sense to me. The other thing is that there could be triggered events in the encounter based on what side of the escalation die is facing upwards, meaning that you've got a monster and at pip 3 or escalation die 3, now this ability comes into play. And it could be some sort of massive ability. It's kind of like the action-oriented monsters that Matt Colville kind of created, where there were certain rounds that would trigger certain abilities. Really neat idea. To me, what's great about that is that adds tension. So the players are getting better and they're feeling like they can hit more and do more damage, and that's always fun. More hits is more fun when you're able to hit. When you miss in D&D or any of these sort of systems, that's not fun. But now you're also worried, like, I'm hitting this thing hard, and this escalation dice is still going up. What's going to happen? So that's really nice. They have what else do they got in the system? Positioning, super simple sort of positioning concept that you're either nearby, you're behind, you're intercepting, which is kind of neat. You are far away or you are engaged. So I'm just writing down all these words because I like the idea that you don't have to just be dudes on a map. You can kind of do some other stuff. You can play more theater of the mind or a little bit more open-ended in terms of like positioning. So we're just writing down their keywords to have it down for later. They also do a concept called fighting in spirit. This is pretty neat. So it can be pretty disheartening if you get knocked out in combat, especially if it's going to be a longer encounter and nobody's got a heal for you or whatever the case is. So fighting in spirit is you still can do something on your turn to help your friends. So this kind of ties into teamwork, where I can make a skill check, and in essence it's kind of, maybe it's part of my history with that player or a bond that I was able to teach them something, and now is the opportunity they can use that ability. I roll my skill check to see if they can. Now they get a +2 on their attack. You know, so it's an idea. I like the idea. It's almost from like Guild Wars 2. In that MMO that was built in that if I got knocked down, my action bar flipped, and all of a sudden I had different actions that I could do only when I was sort of half knocked out until something actually knocked me out. But I like the idea that you're still in the encounter. You're just doing different stuff, different abilities. You don't feel like you're completely out of it. So that's kind of cool. They also have Rally in this system. Rally is in essence second wind from 5e, but for everyone, right? So everyone has an ability to rally and get some hit points of some sort. And I think that's cool because then you can have a non-healer based party, and so you've got something that you can do. This system also added a concept called Mooks. Mooks are multi-linked monsters to a hit point pool. All right, so what was this? Why is this cool? What's cool about this is that instead of having 4 orcs that all have 8 hit points, and they're separate monsters. And so now wherever they're positioned doesn't matter. I have to attack this one, and now next I have to attack this one. So say I have an orc comes at me, it's got 8 hit points. I've got a great axe. I swing, I do 15 damage. Well, I kill him with 8, the rest of the 7 damage, useless. It was overkill, right? Well, if they're linked hit points, meaning that I've got 4 orcs, they come from a pool of 32 hit points where every 8 hit points is one of them. What that means, if I'm attacking the pool and I do 15 damage, that means I'm doing 8 damage to one of them, killing it, and 7 to the next one. Now, it's a little abstracted in the concept. It's a little weird to say, but what that means is that it makes you feel more heroic, because say you have 1 attack, you're not limited to technically 1 target with that attack. If you have these mooks showing up. So this is something that you could add to the game. It's not always there, right? And so what that means is it feels like you can wade through multiple targets, even though you have 1 attack, because you should feel heroic at times, right? So now, but you can still add some cool RP to it. So if 2 orcs are standing next to each other, it makes perfect sense. I take my great axe, I go 15, so I do 8 to this one, I swing through, and I do 7 to that one. And I don't have to have something like a sweep attack or those kind of things. It just happens because of the mechanics. The other thing is, say there's 1 orc here and 1 orc who's like 15 feet away, the DM could say, well, you do 15 damage, so you do 8 to this one, killing it, and if you want, you could throw your great axe and do 7 to the other one, but now I don't have my axe. And so, yes, I was still able to do a ton of damage to 2 different targets on 1 action, but now there's some sort of penalty because they just happened, they weren't next to each other. So thematically, it didn't make sense. Even though you could do like, you do 8 damage to this one, then you throw your dagger and it hits that one for 7, just for theme, because they are all connected. You could say that that's what they do, or throw a hand axe. But I like this. I like the idea of linking a bunch of monsters to a common pool so that it makes it feel thematic, that you're wading through multiple things. It makes you feel more heroic. What else do they do? They do damage on a miss. There's a lot of systems that do this, and they'll do different stuff. Like maybe you do your attribute damage to it. So you do, if you have a strength of 18, maybe you do +4, maybe you do 4 damage on a miss, because normally you'd have +4 from your strength. Some just do like a flat, like if you miss, you do 3 damage. It sucks to miss, so it's nice that you have some choices. You could, or at least you're doing something. You're still contributing. All right, that's my 13th age. Those are the things I really liked about that. I'm sure there's a lot of other things in this system that are awesome. That's my list. The next one we're going to is we're going to go into 4th edition. So I'll see you next time on here.